State of brand sets on the Red Gear Part 2. Right, before we get into this, slight caveat condition. I'm going to be going over things that I think would be really good that would switch up, 1, the meta massively, 2, switch up the overall mechanic and gameplay in the game, and these are all mechanics that are already in the game. I'm just trying to push them towards something that would be conditional as well as usable within the brand sets. One thing that I personally would really like to see with brand sets is the first 2 of the brand, the first perk 1 and perk 2 of the brand would be sort of a bonus to that weapon archetype or whatever it would be, and then the third one would actually be a condition that would massively benefit that weapon, but you have to run all 3 pieces. So this would actually also make things like ninja back builds a lot, and I do mean a lot, more viable. So up first, and as an example, shout out to Prodigy. I called him out in my last video being like, hey, you need to get busy and fix the spreadsheet. And then he went and did it. Oh, being an angry Brit has its perks. But first up, Airaldi. Red core, weapon damage. Perk 1. Skip MMR damage. We no longer really need this, especially with the way expertise is going. So first perk, I would say 15% headshot. Second perk would be 8% damage to armor, rather than it being the third. And then the third perk, I would like to see something like a reverse of the decoy. Rather than the decoy generating 200% threat or whatever it does, if you've got an MMR, you generate less threat. I don't think we could get stealth mechanics in this game, and I know a lot of people would like stealth mechanics in this game, but we don't have that. What we do have is a way in which the game generates threat, as well as an aggro meter. I don't think anyone really knows how the aggro meter works, but with an MMR, I would like to see less aggro. Ideally, with an MMR, you're sniping, you're further back. So I think this would be the best compromise we could get with stealth. Ceska, obviously put that crit chance back up to 10% just because it mostly just bothers my OCD. Not a lot of builds are actually able to hit that 60% cap anymore. We either tend to be 1 or 2% over, or we end up going 2 or 3% over. So 20% Hasbro, I want to argue it, but we don't have a lot of decent sources of Hasbro, and I kind of want to also follow this with adding in the mechanic of killer. Essentially being that if you can get a kill with a critical hit, you get another 10% hazard protection stacking up to 5 times. So you can get your 10% crit chance, 20% Hasbro, and then another 50% Hasbro with getting kills with a crit. Douglas and Harding, this one was a bit of a fun one to figure out, and it will end up being ridiculously overpowered, but it's okay because these will probably never come into the game. But it's alright to keep that 20% pistol damage. If expertise continue, I would like that to become 30%. Rather than stability and accuracy, just put that to 30% weapon handling. That would be great. And then I feel like most pistol builds utilize a shield. So I would like to see 10% shield regen on pistol kill for your shield. So not armor on kill, it will be specific to your shield, but getting a kill with your pistol will basically be like armor on kill, but for your shield. Fenris, being the fact that ARs are in the best place ever at the moment between Lexington, Chameleon, Bighorn, some of the talents that we have available, it's really hard to make suggestions for this that are going to be even remotely balanced. However, one thing that I personally would like to see would be, rather than 10% AR, let's get some 10% RPM. Rather than reload speed, let's get 5%, maybe even 8% damage to targets out of cover. And then for the last perk, I wanted to have a little bit of fun with this to actually add a bit of survivability in, because getting 10% RPM and then 8% detox would be really, really strong. So I kind of wanted to go 2 ways with this. I wanted to go a multi-talent. Kills from cover generate 1% armor regen, and kills out of cover generate 10% armor on kill, both stacking up to 5 times. This would be really powerful. Maybe not have the stacking side of things, but essentially just meaning that if you can keep killing from cover, you will get armor regen, and if you kill from out of cover, you are generating armor on kill. So yeah, that would be an interesting one to do. Grupo! This one was giving me some trouble because I don't know whether to have it lean more towards crit, which is where more that I use Grupo, or have it lean more towards the explosive side. However, we've got lots of sources of crit, whether it be crit chance or crit damage. So I was like, you know what? We'll have it lean towards the explosive. What could it do with explosive? And then I remembered festive delivery. Yeah, you can probably see where this is going. Explosive kills will cause an explosion under the feet of enemies within X range, 5 meters, 10 meters, I'm not sure. But essentially allowing you to chain explosions, which would be a massive boost to things like mortar builds because they do feel pretty weak at the moment, especially in comparison to what other things are doing. And when you are on cooldown, like your turrets are off, you don't have your seeker mines, you are literally just sat there as a dead duck. So at least being able to get a little bit more damage out would be worthwhile within your damage phase. Outside of that, I feel like maybe potentially just 5 more ammo for the mortar turret. That could be pretty good. Although a lot of this is leaning more towards what should be on the skill sets. But then at the same time, having these sorts of things exclusively on the red sets will mean that you've got to actively think about how you build your builds, essentially, which I kind of feel like would be a good thing, also a bad thing. Compromise. Weird. Petrov. First perk should be 15% weapon handling. Second perk, 20% LMG damage. Third perk, while aiming down sights from cover, you take negative 50% damage, which means you are twice as tanky when firing from cover. So you've got to be in cover, and you've got to be aiming down sights, and you have 50% damage resistance. I feel like this would really, really benefit things like LMGs, especially considering a lot of the time in order to get like the maximum amount of damage out, you have to take a ton of damage anyway. And then especially with things like Pestilence as it is now, which a lot of people are enjoying, Glass Cannon is absolutely the best option here. So essentially this would just cancel out Glass Cannon, realistically. Providence defense, and we're going to do something weird here. Because we've got the headshot on the first perk of Airaldi now, what we're actually going to do is the first perk of this be 10% crit chance. The crit damage could actually stay as 13%, but that would be our second perk. What our third perk would be again akin to like Killer. Every critical hit kill, so every kill that is done by a crit, is going to increase our headshot damage by 5%, stacking up to 3 times. That will give us our 15% headshot damage back. So getting headshot kills, or this could also just potentially just be just general weapon damage. So getting kills with a crit would increase our weapon damage, but that could potentially stack more. I like the idea of this being like your go-to DPS set still. It's been a mainstay within the whole DPS meta for a hell of a long time. So I like it staying there and it being more orientated towards just getting maximum amounts of DPS, but I also wouldn't mind it being conditional for that, and having that condition that you have to run it as a crit build would actually be pretty damn juicy in my opinion. Overlord. We're going to remove the 10% rifle damage, and we're just going to have 30% weapon handling as our first one, maybe even second. Probably actually have it as second, because what I want to do for the first one would be to have shots penetrate, like +1 penetration. There is penetration in the game. It is something that we were able to do with the original Dodge City holster before it was changed, and it's something that the TAC 50 is also capable of doing. Penetration does exist in the game. I don't know why it doesn't apply to other things. Having it on a rifle, +1 penetration and then 30% weapon handling, I think would be really good. Then what I would like to see, because CQB mindset, right? And if you don't know what CQB is, it's close quarter battle. Typically when tier 1 units will do close quarter battle, they will use very high powered rifles or like a very good assault rifle set to single fire, because you need to watch your shots. And the idea here being is if you're aiming down sights and moving, you take negative 50% damage, 50% damage resistance. So essentially you can build as a CQB specialist on a rifle. They're not going to be as damaging as things like ARs, as we know, like ARs generally at the moment do more DPS. But that will be compensated for having, one, the penetration, and 2, if you've got 50% damage resistance and then like 10% armor on kill, and you can just smash through a lot of content just by walking forward. This is like the main one. If the devs said that they would absolutely put just one of these suggestions in the game, for me, this is the one. Having that penetration with like a CQB mindset would be, oh my god. Oh, Sokolov! I had a crazy idea for this one, right? 20% SMG damage, 20% critical hit damage, and then you gain 1% damage resistance for every non-crit. If you did it for crit, it would end up being way too powerful. Doing it for a non-crit makes it a little bit more balanced. And it will also promote run and gun. Walker and Harris. We're going to remove that 5% weapon damage. So first perk would be 5% damage to armor. Second perk, 10% damage to health. And then for this one, we're actually going to do something a bit different. Rather than it being like a conditional thing, I kind of want to see armor plating as an actual thing. So kind of looking towards how Ravenous works, as that only affects armor plating, which is in itself damage to health, but the armor plating damage isn't damage to health, if that makes sense. So I would like to see 15% damage to armor plating, which is Chunga's, Warhound's, the dude in Dark Hours. Zwia! Yay! I had a genius idea for this one. I probably wouldn't work because this mechanic isn't in the game. 15% mag size, 20% rifle damage. No, I kind of want to add in that +1 penetration here. Maybe go for +2 if we're actually able to get more than 1 penetration. I'm not quite sure how the game calculates penetration, but it is in the game. And then for the final one, we're going to add in a new stat. And we're going to call it weapon efficiency. So a lot like skill efficiency, but it's going to be getting a kill adds 10% weapon efficiency for a decent-ish time, like 2 or 3 minutes. And it stacks 3 times, so that's going to give you up to 30% weapon efficiency. And my idea behind weapon efficiency is it's the exact same as weapon handling, but it also affects weapon damage. So you get your accuracy, your stability, your reload, your swap speed, all of it, plus damage. So it's a lot like skill efficiency and how skill efficiency works with skills, but for weapons. Armor efficiency is something that I would also like to see. Armor regen, armor on kill, bloody blah. But that would be like really weird in percentage, because if you got like, I don't know, 5% armor efficiency, that's 5% armor regen, 5% armor on kill. I mean, that would be pretty balanced, but 5% armor on kill isn't really helping anyone. And then last one on this list would be Legatus. We're going to get rid of the slot speed. This doesn't even need to be really a stat in the game, despite the fact that I said it would be part of weapon efficiency. But we're going to have the first perk as 70% optimal range. Perk 2, we're going to do for like 5 or 8% detoc as well. We've got 2 sources with brand sets that give DTA. I feel like we need more that give detoc. RPM is going to be like the exclusive thing to Fenris. So we're going to have 70% optimal range, 8% detoc. And then for the final one, what we're actually going to do is take a little hint from Waveform of where it oscillates between 2 skills. But what this is going to do, because it's all about optimal range, etc., it's going to oscillate between ranges. So we can get like, I don't know what the value should be. I feel like, because a lot of them are like, you can get up to like 30% LMG and AR damage and bloody blah in certain things. So I'm not too sure on what the overall value should be. But we'll just go with 20. But basically, it will start at, you do plus 20% weapon damage to enemies within 20 meters. And then it will slowly oscillate to doing plus 20% weapon damage. Like just the red core value of 20% weapon damage will slowly oscillate to doing 20% more weapon damage to enemies over 20 meters, and it just constantly just bounces back and forth. I feel like that'd be a really good mechanic to actually put in the game as like an actual set. Anyway, they are my crazy ideas for how brand sets could be changed. Obviously, doubtless that this will ever even happen, and if it even did happen, it's definitely not happening in Division 2, but hopefully it might be give people a few ideas of, especially if the devs ever watch this. I do know they watch my videos on occasion when I moan about stuff. But yeah, these could be potentially good ideas of what they could do when it comes to Division 3, if we are getting Division 3, which I'm going to press X to doubt. Have fun, good luck, don't die, it's bad for the health.